Good evening, Erev Tov, Dobro V'Yetcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Tetzei. We're going to do Os Daled, section number 4. Before we begin, let's take a look at a couple of very well-known psukim from our parsha. This is Perek Chaf Beis, psukim Vav and Zion. Ki yikore kan sipor lefonecha baderech. When you will happen upon the nest of a bird in front of you on the way, bechol eitz o al haaretz, and the nest could be in a tree or on the ground, efrochim o veitzim, and there are baby birds or eggs in the nest, v'ha'em rovetzes al ha'efrochim, and the mother is hovering over the baby birds, o al habeitzim, or over the eggs. Lo sikach ha'em al habonim. Do not take the mother with the children. So if a person comes across a nest with eggs and the mommy bird is there, and the person wants to take the eggs or the baby birds, they cannot. They are not allowed. This pasuk forbids a person to take the mother bird along with either the eggs or the baby birds. Okay, you can't take both. Next pasuk. Shaleach tishalach es ha'em. You shall surely send away the mother bird. Ve'es habonim tikach loch, and the children you can take for yourself. Once you do the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, then you can take either the eggs or the baby birds. Leman yitavloch, in order that it should be good for you, v'ha'arachta yomim, and your days should be prolonged, your days should be lengthened. So those are two psukim. In the short form, we refer to that mitzvah as shiluach hakan. The sending away literally means the sending away of the nest, but it means sending away of the mother bird away from the nest, so that we're permitted to take the baby birds and the eggs, and which we would not be permitted to do if we took the mother bird, because you can't take the mother bird and the babies or the eggs. That's what the two psukim are basically teaching us. So let's take a look. Zera Shimshon, Parshas Tetzei, Os Daled, section 4. But Perek Hey de Brachos, in the 5th chapter of the Gemara of Maseches Brachos, the Gemara is talking about things that a shliach tzibor might say, that if the shliach tzibor says during the repetition of the Shemona Esrei, you have to stop him from doing so. So here's an example. Ha'omer al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha. If the chazan decides to take a little poetic license, and in saying the Shemona Esrei, the chazan decides to add the words that's saying to Hashem, your rachamim, your mercy extends to the nest of the bird, you have to stop him from doing so. Another thing, modim. If the shliach tzibor decides that saying one modim, and as in modim anachnu lach, we thank you Hashem, if one is good, then I'll say it twice. Modim, thank you. If he does that, mishatkin oso, we must quiet him. We must let the chazan know that he should not say either of those two things. Ve'omrinon hasam b'Gemara, and in the Gemara over there, it says the reason why we don't want the chazan to say that Hashem's mercy extends to the bird in the nest. She'osem midosov shel hakodesh baruch hu rachamim, because he is making the attributes of Hashem into mercy. His words are expressing an idea that Hashem's attributes are to show mercy. Ve'enon ela gezeras melech al avodav, when really it is a decree from a king on his servants. So the simple way this Gemara is explained is that the shliach tzibor, in his flowery language and in the phrase that he's adding about Hashem's mercy extending to the bird in the nest, he is actually saying something that's we don't want him to say, because he's making it seem like Hashem's mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird is based on mercy, rachamim, when actually we should view the mitzvah as a gezeras hamelech, as a divine decree from Hashem, and that we as Hashem's servants must fulfill. We should not think of the mitzvah as, oh, this is such a nice, sweet thing that Hashem wants us to do, and so we're doing it because it's a nice, sweet thing. No, we should always focus on the fact that Hashem gave this mitzvah to us as a decree, a divine decree that we have to follow because we are Hashem's servants who have to follow His commandments. That is the Gemara in Maseches Brachos. Next paragraph, kosher, but there's a problem. Deho amrinon b'medrash parsha zo, because in the Medrash Rabbah on this parsha, Parshas Tetzei, we say as follows: Ucheshem shenismale hakodesh baruch hu rachamim al habehema, just like Hashem is filled with mercy over animals, just like Hashem demonstrates mercy to the animals in the world, Kach nismale rachamim al ha'ofos. So too Hashem is filled with mercy over the birds in this world. Minayin, the Medrash asks, from where do we know that Hashem is filled with mercy on birds? Shenemar, as the pasuk in our parsha states, ki yikare kan sipor v'chule. If you happen upon a nest and the mother's bird there, send the mother bird away. And only then should you take the eggs and the efrochim or the baby birds. Umikan nira beveror. From here, the Zera Shimshon says, from this Medrash Rabbah on our parsha, we see beveror clearly. She'ikar tam kan sipor, that the main reason for the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, hu mishum rachamim, is because of Hashem's mercy. So the question is a very basic one and a very fundamental one. We have a seeming contradiction between two sources, and both sources come from the teachings of Chazal, from the Chachomim of the time of the Mishnah and Gemara. In the teaching in Masechta Brachos, we quiet the Chazan, we shush the Chazan if he talks about Hashem's mercy extending to the bird in the nest. And the Gemara says, why do we stop him from saying that? Because we shouldn't view the mitzvah as being based on Hashem's mercy. We should view it as a decree from Hashem. Okay, fine. We get it. Beautiful lesson. But then we look in the Medrash Rabbah that the Zera Shimshon brought in the second paragraph, and the Medrash Rabbah specifically says that we learn about Hashem's rachamim, Hashem's mercy for the birds of the world through the mitzvah of shiluach hakan. So that means that it is based on Hashem's mercy. So the Zera Shimshon's not putting it this way, but we might kind of paraphrase and say, wait a minute, Chazal, you have to choose what you want to teach us. Do you want to say the mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird, should be viewed as a decree of Hashem, and we shouldn't be connecting it to rachamim, to Hashem's mercy? Or do you want us to connect it and think of Hashem as showing mercy and rachamim to his creatures and his animals and his birds? Is that the way you want us to think about it? So we don't know the answer because the two sources appear to contradict each other. Next paragraph. Ve'od amrinon hasam. And we also say over there, meaning over there in the Medrash Rabbah that we were just quoting. Yesh mitzvah shematon sechora kavod. There is a mitzvah. The reward for its performance is honor. The yesh shematon sechora osher. And there's a mitzvah, the reward for which is wealth. We're now on the next page in the top right column. Uma maton sechora shel mitzvah zo. The Medrash asks, what is the reward that is given for this mitzvah, meaning the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird of shiluach hakan? She'im ein lecha banim. The reward is if you don't have children and you do this mitzvah, ani nosein lecha banim, I'm going to give you children. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, ve'es habonim tikach loch, in the children you should take for yourself. So the Medrash says, when the pasuk says, shoo the mother bird away, and then Es habonim tikach loch, then you can take the children. It's teaching you not just the obvious lesson of the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird before you take the children or the eggs. It's also telling you something about the reward that you're going to receive for doing the mitzvah, which is es habonim tikach loch. You will be able to take home children. You'll be able to have children based as a reward, based on the reward for doing this mitzvah. Ve'af bozeh tzorech iyun. And this also requires analysis. Ma inyan sochar zeh shel habonim. What is the connection between this reward of having children, of receiving the great reward and blessing of bringing children into the world, im mitzvah zo? What's the connection with this mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird? So the Zera Shimshon does not think that that's an obvious connection, and we can certainly understand that. And he wants us to analyze the situation, which he's going to do for us momentarily, and to help explain what's the connection between these two things. Also, let's not forget that Zera Shimshon started with a question about the apparent contradiction between what the Gemara in Brachos says about the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, and what the Medrash Rabbah and Devarim says on our parsha says about the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. One source said it's not doesn't seem to have anything to do with Hashem's rachamim, and the other source said it has everything to do with Hashem's rachamim. So don't forget that original question, and now we have this additional question about the connection between the reward for fulfilling the mitzvah of shiluach hakan as having children, and what's the connection? Why should that be the appropriate reward? Next paragraph. Ach ze yuvan bifpshitus. However, this can be understood in a simple way. B'mai de'isa sham, with what is stated there, meaning in the Medrash again. This is another quote from the Medrash Rabbah. Dovar acher, the Medrash says another thing, and meaning another thing about these psukim dealing with the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. Mahu shaleach tishalach es ha'im. What did the Torah mean by using a double language of shaleach tishalach? Send, you shall send, es ha'im, the mother bird. Couldn't the Torah have just said, shaleach, send away the mother bird? Why did it have to say shaleach tishalach, send, you shall send the mother bird? Medrash answers, im kiyamta mitzvah shiluach, if you fulfill the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, at mimaher lavo melech haMashiach, then you are hastening the arrival of the King Mashiach, of the Melech HaMashiach. Shekosuv bo shiluach, because the word shiluach, sending, is written about the time of Mashiach. Shene'amar, as the pasuk in Malachi says, Hine anochi sholeach lochem v'chulei. Behold, I am sending to you, etc. And the next words are, I'm sending to you Eli Yahu Hanavi, before the great and awesome day of Hashem. So we see, so the Medrash is saying this extra shiluach, this extra word sending, is so that we will not miss the connection between the mitzvah of shiluach hakan and the fact that fulfilling that mitzvah helps bring Mashiach. And why do we think of Mashiach? They hint to Mashiach because of this famous pasuk, Hinei anochi sholeach lachem es Eliyahu Hanavi. Hashem's going to send Eliyahu Hanavi before the advent of the time of Mashiach. Ubeperek daled di Yevamos amrinon, and in the 4th chapter of Maseches Yevamos we say, Ein ben David ba ad sheyichlu kol haneshamos shebaguf. The son of David, which of course is a name, a reference to Mashiach, the son of David will not come until all of the neshamos are finished that are in the guf, that are in the body. This statement is explained in 2 ways, at least 2 ways in the Meforshim. The simplest way, the Pashut Pshat, is to say that the Gemara is saying until all of the neshamos that are waiting to be put into physical bodies are in fact put into physical bodies in this world. Until that happens, Mashiach is not going to come. However, Rashi in the Gemara says that the word goof here doesn't mean body the way we would normally use it, like our body, our physical body. It's a term that can be used to refer to an otzar, a kind of storehouse of the neshamos in the other world, in the world of neshamos, in the spiritual world, and the location for all of the neshamos that are destined to come into the world are located, are kept, are stored in this place called the Guf. And according to Rashi, the Gemara reads like this: Ein ben David ba, the Mashiach will not come ad sheyichlu kol neshamos, until all of the neshamos are used up, shebaguf, that are in this storehouse of neshamos in the heavenly world. Either way, however you understand those words, we're being taught in an amazing and phenomenal teaching that there's a connection between the advent of the time of Mashiach with all of the neshamos that are, so to speak, waiting to come into our world, being able to come into the world in a physical form, being paired with a body and able to come into our world. Next paragraph. V'hoil shematon secharim shel mitzvah zo. And since the reward for doing the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan is sheyemaher lovo melech HaMoshiach, that it will help hasten the coming of the arrival of Mashiach, mishum hachi, because of this, yifgedehu bivanim. That's why a person who fulfills this mitzvah is rewarded with children. Kedei sheyichlu kol haneshamos shebaguf, in order that all of the neshamos that are waiting to come into the world will come into the world. So the Zera Shimshon is saying, he's going back to answer his question about why is the reward for doing Shiluach HaKan to have children, to be blessed with children. And he's answering and saying, to understand that, you need to know the big picture. And the big picture is that one of the things that helps bring Mashiach is having children, because having children means that neshamas are coming from the spiritual world and inhabiting bodies in our world. And when that process is completed, Mashiach will come. So therefore, if you do the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan, an appropriate reward, since you're bringing children into the world, which is helping bring Mashiach, since you're sending away the mother bird, which is helping to bring Mashiach, and bringing Mashiach can only happen according to this source if all of the neshamos come into the world. So your sechar, so to speak, is to continue to help with the mitzvah of hastening the arrival of Mashiach by bringing children into the world. So you do Shiluach HaKan, that's going to bring you, God willing, the reward of having children, and it's also going to hasten the arrival of Mashiach. Next paragraph. V'adayin tzrichen anu limodai. And we still need to understand, we still need to acquire the knowledge, Eich toloi bias haMashiach b'kiyum mitzvah zo. How is it that the coming arrival of Mashiach is dependent upon fulfilling the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan? What's that connection? V'yesh lomar, and we can say, the Isa b'medrash Rus. It states in the medrash on Megillas Rus, Huva b'sifsei chohen parasha zo. It is brought, and this source is brought in the commentary called Sifsei Chohen on this parsha, Parshas Ki Tetzei. Ki mitoch shehu mishaleach es ha'em, since a person sends away the mother bird, he holechet v'doeget umitztaeres. She goes and she worries and she suffers al kino v'al boneho, on her nest and on her children. So when the mother bird is sent away, she has a very powerful emotional reaction because she's being sent away from the nest full of eggs or actual baby birds that she's protecting with, wanting to protect with her life, but she's being sent away. V'holeches no'a v'noda, and she goes and wanders around from place to place. V'rotza laharoges atzma, and she wants to kill herself. the distress of the mother bird, the pain and the suffering of the mother bird is to such a degree that she doesn't want to live any longer. She wants to kill herself if she's being deprived of taking care of the eggs or her eggs or the baby birds. Umerov tsa'ara, and from this tremendous amount of her pain, hasar hamemune al ha'ofos, the angelic officer who is appointed to take care of the birds, to represent the birds in the world, mevakesh rachamim me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, request mercy from Hashem. So the mother bird, the mother bird is sent away. She begins to suffer grievously, profoundly, to the point that the malach, the angel who's in charge of representing the birds in the world, comes and says to Hashem, I need you, Hashem, I need you to show mercy. Look how this mother bird is suffering. Ve'oz HaKadosh Baruch Hu mismale rachamim. And then Hashem is filled with mercy. Ve'omer, and he says, Im zeh hasar mevakesh rachamim al menuyov, if this angelic officer and representative of the birds is requesting mercy from me, al minuyov, on the ones he is appointed to, the malach that is appointed to care for them, meaning on the birds, I, sha'ani rachamon, who am the merciful one, umimeni heim harachamim, and from me comes the entire concept and idea of rachamim, of mercy. Lo arachim al bonai, should I not show mercy and compassion to my children? Oy shecharavti es beisi, woe is to me that I destroyed my house, meaning I destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, top of the next column, v'chule, etc. Meaning that line of reasoning from Hashem goes on, woe is me that I destroyed the Beis HaMikdash and I exiled my children and scattered them among the nations of the world. And Hashem talks to himself, so to speak, about how the Bnei Yisrael is suffering after the Chorban Beis HaMikdash and after the Golus, and that he needs to return them to their land. Mi goram kol zeh, who caused all of this to happen? Who did the first thing that started this process that led up, that culminated in Hashem being kind of overwhelmed, so to speak, with rachamim, with mercy for his children, and thinking of ending the Golus and bringing them back to their land and rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash? How did all of this start? Also, shekiye mitzvah shiluach hakan. It all started with the person who fulfilled the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. Ad kan lashono, until here is the end of the quote. Hare mivoar. So now it has been explained. Heach mitzvah shiluach hakan mekareves hageula. How it is that fulfilling the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird brings closer the redemption. So the Zera Shimshon here has shared with us, I think, what for most people would be a hitherto unknown concept, an unknown idea about the suffering of the mother bird, and how this inspires the malach, the divine officer in charge of birds in the world, to beg for rachamim from Hashem. And this in turn brings Hashem to say, look at what this malach is saying. I need to have rachamim. I need to have mercy and show compassion to my children. And all of this is brought about. All of this starts with the mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird. Next paragraph. Ve'od nimtzenu lemedim. And furthermore, we have found through our learning b'teirutz hamedrash harishon, the answer to the very first medrash that this piece began with. Let's remind ourselves of the original question, which the Zera Shimshon is now circling back to answer. Original question: how come the Gemara in Brachos said that when Hashem gave us the mitzvah of shiluach hakan, it does not seem to be about Hashem showing mercy to the birds, but then the medrash in Devarim Rabbah, Medrash Rabbah and Devarim said it does have to do with mercy? How do we explain that? De'in hachinami, we have to start by conceding shemitzvah zo yesh ba midas rachamim, this mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird, does in fact have an element of rachamim, of mercy, of compassion. Aval eno min haroi, but it is not appropriate, lomar, to say shenigzera mitzvah zo bishvil harachamim, that this mitzvah of sending away the mother bird was decreed because of mercy, because of compassion. Shaharei harachamim enom boim ela la'achar mikan, because the real mercy, meaning the mercy that Hashem is inspired to show to his children, doesn't come until later, until later in the process. Shemachmas habechi shel oso ha'em, and it comes because of the crying of the mother bird. Oz hakodesh baruch hu mismale rachamim. Then, after a person fulfills the mitzvah, Hashem is filled with mercy for his children. It's not that Hashem is filled with mercy for the mother bird. Hashem is filled with mercy for his children, for Klal Yisrael. Ve'adarabba, and just the opposite. Mitachila, from the beginning of the mitzvah, from the beginning when a person sends the mother bird away, nira kemo achazorios, it actually looks like an act of cruelty. It doesn't look like an act of compassion when a person shoos the mother bird away and all the mother bird wants to do is to be able to stay and be with its children, its babies or its eggs. It looks like it's a cruel act. Shahare oso ha'aim, because that mother bird, mishum hachi, because of this, because of being sent away, so ekes is crying out, ubocha, and crying, merov tzara, from its tremendous amount of suffering. Ve'ein elu rachamim, and this certainly doesn't, it can't be considered an act of rachamim. So the Zera Shimshon says to us, the reason one source talks about the mitzvah of shiluach hakan as involving rachamim, and another source talks about it as if it's a decree from Hashem and is not connected to rachamim, is because it contains both elements. It contains an element of rachamim, and it contains an element not only not of rachamim, but an element almost of something that appears to be cruelty, achazorios. And because of that, because of those two aspects of this mitzvah, we have two different sources. The source in brachos is focused on the fact of the mitzvah itself, the act itself, which we should not see as a direct act of mercy, but rather we do it because Hashem has commanded us to do it. And the Medrash Rabbah sees it as is focused on the rachamim, the mercy that is that the mitzvah of shiluach hakan serves as a catalyst for in Hashem. Hashem feels rachamim for his children based on the suffering of the mother bird and the pleadings that the that the angelic messenger makes on her behalf. Next paragraph. Uvahachi nicha tuva. And with this, with all of this that we've now explained and all of this that we now understand, it is nicha tuva, it is very good, lishna, the language that was used in the original Gemara in Masechta Brachos, she'ose midosov shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim. The Gemara said over there, why do we quiet the Chazan who talks about God's mercy extending to the nest? Because this Chazan is making the attributes of Hashem, turning them into mercy, ve'enon ele gezeros melech al avodov, and they are only decrees of Hashem that his servants must fulfill. The belav hachi, without our explanation that the Zera Shimshon has developed for us, kosher, there would be a strong question on that Gemara in Brachos. The hayalo lomar, because the Gemara should apparently have said, she'ose mitzvos shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim, that the shliach tzibor is turning the mitzvos of Hashem into issues of mercy and compassion. Zahainu a mitzvah shel shiluach hakan, because he's referring to the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. Ve'enon ella gezeras melech, and that is only a decree of the king. V'chule. Umahu haloshon shel midosov did nokat. What is this language of Hashem's attributes that the Gemara use? Let's pause here because the question might not be absolutely clear to us. Zera Shimshon is saying, he's really now circling all the way back to that Gemara in Brachos in the very beginning in the first paragraph, and he's saying now that we understand things more clearly, let's look back and focus on the language of the Gemara. In the Gemara, it stated that we should quiet a chazan who talks about the mercy of Hashem extending to the bird in the nest. And why? Because that person is making Hashem's midos, Hashem's attributes, as if they're all focused on rachamim, as opposed to a decree of the king. And the Zera Shimshon says, wait a minute, that doesn't seem to be the right word. The issue is not Hashem's midos. The issue is the mitzvos, specifically the mitzvah, the commandment of sending away the mother bird. The chazan is making it seem that the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird is all based on rachamim, is based on Hashem's mercy for the birds. And that's what the Gemara in Brachos is objecting to. So the Zera Shimshon says, why talk about midos in the Gemara? It should talk about mitzvos. The Yesh Lomar, next paragraph, and we can say, Shemidoso shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sheHaKadosh Baruch Hu. The attribute of Hashem is V'chanosi es asher ochon. I will show compassion to the one that I will show compassion to. And Chazal comment on those words from a pasuk. Af al pi she'eino hagun. Even if the person who I'm going to show compassion to is not fitting, it's not appropriate, the person doesn't deserve to receive my compassion, I'm still going to do it. V'richamti es asher arachem, continuing in the pasuk that's being quoted from Shmos, and I will show mercy to the one I show mercy to. Afal pi she'eno kedai, and Chazal comment, even if that person again is not kedai, is not appropriate to receive Hashem's mercy. So one of the most important midos, if we're trying to understand Hashem's attributes, the Zera Shimshon is telling us, is to understand that Hashem is not predictable. Hashem might show mercy and compassion in situations where we easily understand that the person, the beneficiaries of Hashem's mercy and compassion clearly deserve it, and that might happen in some cases. In other cases, the recipients of Hashem's mercy and compassion, it may be impossible for us to understand why they deserve it. They seem to be completely undeserving and unfitting to be receiving Hashem's mercy and compassion. And yet, Hashem tells us in the pasuk that was quoted that is a fact of reality, a fact of Hashem's way of conducting this world. Kemosha Amru Razal, as the Rabbanan, as Chazal say, and therefore when Hashem shows kindness to one, he is not obligated to show kindness to another person. The fact that Hashem shows kindness to one individual does not allow us, does not permit us to say, oh, if Hashem showed mercy to this person, then certainly he will show mercy to this other, kindness to this other person who we think is even more deserving. It doesn't work that way. V'zeh ha'omer keshem shechasta al hakein. And this chazan, this shliach tzibor, who said, just like you showed mercy to the nest of the birds, chus v'rachem aleinu, show mercy and pity on us, no sein chiyuv leHakadosh Baruch Hu l'rachem al zeh. It's as if he's saying there's some obligation on Hashem to show mercy to a certain person. Achar shekvar rachem al acher, after Hashem showed mercy to a different person. Ve'eno ela toeh, and this can only be viewed as a mistake. So here the Zera Shimshon is delving deeper into why the Gemara taught us to quiet the chazan and not allow him to use this type of language about the mitzvah of shiluach hakan and Hashem's mercy. And he's explaining it to us based on the idea of Hashem's midos, Hashem's attributes. And one of Hashem's attributes is that only Hashem will choose when and in what circumstances and to whom to show and to demonstrate mercy and kindness and compassion. We can never take it upon ourselves to draw conclusions and deductions and, so to speak, say to Hashem, if you did this, Hashem, certainly you must do this, certainly you will do this. Goes without saying that it is not only our ability, is not only appropriate, but it's our obligation to daven to Hashem, to beseech from Hashem, to ask Hashem to show mercy and rachamim and kindness and compassion to people who need it, ourselves and others. That we're not talking about at all. What we're talking about here is how it's not appropriate to kind of arrogate to ourselves this idea that we can judge when Hashem should show mercy and what are the right situations and appropriate circumstances for Hashem to show mercy and compassion. That is not the case. We can always ask for it. We should always ask for it. We should daven for it, but we should never assume that we know and understand Hashem's ways and Hashem's attributes. Ve'ivra, top of the next column. Ve'ivra, and in truth, she'al yedei mitzvah zo, in truth, through this mitzvah of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird, misgalgalim harachamim, it literally rolls, it brings about, the process will culminate in Hashem showing mercy. As we said, when Hashem sees that this angelic officer who's appointed on birds, mismale rachamim al ha'ofos, shehem avodav, that angelic officer is filled with mercy on the birds who are his charges, so to speak, his servants, the ones he's responsible for. Mikol shekain ani, Hashem says, how much more so myself. She'af al pisha Yisrael, even though my children Yisrael, keshe'enam osim ritzono shel makom, when they do not, when God forbid, chas v'shalom, they do not fulfill the will of Hashem, nikroim avodim, they are referred to as Hashem's servants or even slaves. They're servants to Hashem, but they're not considered like Hashem's children. Im kol zeh, nevertheless, muchrach ani lerachem alehem, nevertheless, it's as if I am obligated to show mercy to them because of this whole process that happened with the mitzvah of shiluach hakan and the bird suffering and the angelic officer pleading for mercy. So it is as if Hashem feels a certain pressure, one might say, or a certain a reason to show mercy and rachamim because of this process. The efshar she'yeh zeh lahashtik, perhaps this is intended to quiet hamidas hadin, the attribute of justice, the hamekatragim al Yisrael, and the spiritual accusers against Bnei Yisrael. Kidiisa b'medrash, as it states in the medrash. This is now Bereshis Rabbah, the Medrash Rabbah on Sefer Bereshis. Al pasuk, on the pasuk, veha Elokim nisa es Avraham, and Hashem tested Avraham. So the Medrash states on that pasuk, Hadahu dichsiv, this idea of Hashem testing Avraham is reflected in a pasuk in Tehillim. Nasata lireyecha, you have given to those who fear you, nes, a banner. But the word nes obviously can also be connected to test from the pasuk we just read. Veho Elokim nisa es Avraham. So you have given to those who fear you a banner, and then parenthetically a test. Lihisnoses mipnei koshet sela, to rise high, to exhibit as a banner, mipnei koshet, because of truth or because of correctness, sela, forever. What does that mean? Bishvil shetiskashe midas hadin ba'olam v'ayin sham. In order to show the truth of the midas hadin in this world, that midas hadin applies in this world, etc. What is the Zera Shimshon saying here? What he's saying is that when Hashem tested Avraham, the Medrash says it wasn't just a test about Hashem wanting to see if Avraham would obey. It also was to be used as a banner, as a something to show off and something to demonstrate to the world that Avraham followed Hashem's commandments, his mitzvos, and fulfilled all of his tests, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging. Avraham fulfilled them, and therefore Hashem was able, so to speak, to say to the world and to the Midas Hadin, the attribute of justice, I picked Avraham to begin building the nation of Bnei Yisrael, and that wasn't out of some kind of arbitrariness or favoritism or unfair, illogical favoritism. I chose Avraham to be the progenitor of the Bnei Yisrael because of his incredible righteousness and commitment to follow my commandments and obey each and every one of them and pass all of the tests that I placed in front of them. And so that is that can be and also part of the motivation of the doing mitzvos and fulfilling the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKan, as an example that we've been talking about, that Hashem is able to say, if you do it because you think it's merciful, then everyone will look at it and say, oh, what nice people. But if you do the mitzvah as a gezeras melech, as the Zera Shimshon pointed out in the very beginning, if you fulfill the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, because this is simply the decree of Hashem, this is the command of Hashem, and we as the descendants of Avraham Avinu, and we as the servants of Hashem try to do everything we can to fulfill Hashem's mitzvos and commandments, then we will be, so to speak, assisting in this process of bringing truth to the world and truth to the Midas Hadin. Yasher Koach for joining in the learning this week in the Zera Shimshon, and we look forward, God willing, to learning again together in the Zera Shimshon next week.